Yeah, I thought so. Pakistan schools.
On this occasion, my aim was to explore how a selected group of new arrivals, all aged 12, year 8, draw on their cultural and linguistic resources to become pupils in the new setting. More specifically, my questions were how are subject learning and language development opportunities opened up for the pupils by the curriculum and pedagogy, and how do the learners respond to the opportunities made available to them. One learner I'm going to say a bit more about today. As I say, I looked at more, but Zara was a particularly interesting one. She'd arrived 2 years earlier as a refugee from Somalia. She'd come directly, but she'd attended 3 other British schools briefly before settling in at her present school. But she hadn't, she claimed, attended school in Somalia. She'd been taught at home. And the particular focus today is they're learning how to be a pupil, how to do school, if you like, in a new school but also a new society. So when we go through some of these little vignettes of practice, we can think about is it possible to see some sort of ideological underpinning to what is going on? And sort of practically, this relates to certain roles and also the way that the curriculum and knowledge is interpreted, pedagogy. The teacher as friend, confidant, or authority. The curriculum is negotiated, flexible, or given. Knowledge is co-constructed or imparted, and pedagogy is visible or invisible. Now that leads into my first example really of a class that I'll talk about fairly briefly, the humanities class. Mr. H works alongside Miss M to teach something called humanities. Suppose one day it was geography, one day it was history. And so I guess the theme of Italy was sort of had a historical element, but it was basically what we would traditionally call geography, I suppose. And for pretty much the full 3 weeks, the theme was Italy. But for the purposes of my talk just now, there was a strong emphasis on entertainment, on the use of entertaining content. So this explains my next couple of slides, because the idea seemed to be very much that you had to sugar the pill of learning with fun activities. And you think, okay, fine. But the difficulty for me was that I don't think this group of new arrivals had a clue who Homer Simpson was. And I'm sounding a bit unkind here about the teachers, but it seemed to me that rather than motivating the kids, they were just completely perplexed, you know. A more visible and transparent knowledge base would have helped them. So the maths class was very different, and perhaps not surprisingly, because Mr. H was a British teacher. I think he was doing teach first, one of those things. Ms. B she'd studied in Poland during the Soviet era, and she is, I want to suggest, quite a sort of Russian-style teacher, as we'll see in a minute. I've put in bold to show you the very strongly framed teaching that she used. So that, now this is a question for Priyanka, a few lines later. This is a question for Marek. So that it was always she had a very clear idea about how her questions were going to be targeted to particular students in advance. So you get a flavour perhaps of how her class was organised, very differently from Mr. H's sort of free-for-all, if you like. But I've chosen this moment because I really like it when Ms. B, in the maths class, and it's very clear, by the way, that this is maths. I mean, this is unequivocal. But what was interesting to me that English, how English was interpreted, you know, in terms of the curriculum, on four mornings of the week, English is constituted by a phonics class. Even though these children, apart from one, can all read in their first language, they can all read in English. They talk about their reading in English. But it's this thing that we're familiar with called filling the gaps. It doesn't matter if you can read, you haven't done the h or the whatever phoneme it might be. And Ms. P is absolutely dedicated to this, you know, when I interviewed her, you know. So for 2 whole terms, 4 days a week, you know, there was no literature, the English curriculum became the phonics club. But this is Ms. B sort of coming, she tries to make a joke of it, which is quite sort of sweet in a way, you know, she's very good at this. So she comes in and she says, sorry I am late, good morning class, and it goes on and on. So let's actually try saying hat, class, hat, nice. Praise, you see. Horse. No, we haven't done all the phonemes. Then we can't do horse because I suppose it must be or one of the phonemes hasn't been done. But interestingly, and this is part of my message, is that the pupils try to break through this. They try to make more of the meagre stuff that they've been, you know, handed really. So they don't take any notice about only using easy words. They use words like humble and handsome. And because, as a respite from 4 days of phonics, on Friday they have the drama class. The group. I should have said 5 girls and 7 boys, 7 or 8 boys, I think, in the group. A lot of them Muslim, but 5 girls. So Zara wasn't the only Muslim girl. She was wearing the hijab. And what they were required to do is form a circle and sit on each other's laps. Whereas Ms. P was absolutely, you know, relentless in insisting that they all join the activity. But as it starts, Zara withdraws to stand at one side. She doesn't say anything, she just withdraws. Ms. P says, as you see in the bulb there, Zara, you have another chance to get in without being silly. Refusing to do drama is really bad. So no concessions to any, you know, sensitivities about her religious identity and affiliation. I give this example because it seems to me, is it community, is it collectivist? But what Ms. P is saying is that the class is more important than your individual identity on this occasion. And you're letting your class down, you're letting your classmates down. And indeed, the other kids are loving this, it should be said, and saying, come in, man, come in. And eventually, she does. She rejoins the group. Now, when I stop in a minute, I'm sure many of you will be horrified, saying, what was this teacher doing? This is outrageous. Is it defensible? But I think it's an interesting question to raise in the light of rights and responsibilities, what schooling is all about. What would you have done if you were Ms. P? What should she have done?